right, and welcome to the Ask a CISSP episode of the Other Side of the Firewall podcast. So this is the Thursday episode where I talk to someone who is in those C-suite and senior level positions. The Other Side of the Firewall is that cybersecurity focused podcast where we talk about the latest and greatest cybersecurity news, as well as we interview those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who've made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. So with me today, I have a special guest, Shauna Weatherly from FedSubK. Hopefully I said all that correctly.
Yeah, you did.
Because usually I
Great,
ask that be in the
great.
pre-show, but I just completely slipped my mind. So we've actually talked in the past. I think we've actually been in a couple of video calls together, but
hmm
primarily through email. So I've been kind of getting a feel for what you do and how you do it. You bring a wealth of knowledge with you. I believe it's 35 years.
Yeah,
That is a
just about.
lot of specialized just knowledge and experience. So I'm sure I'm just barely going to scratch the surface within our meeting. So that means you have to come back on, right?
Okay, no problem.
So with that being said, if you can just give us a little bit insight into your background and as well as your experience before we move on to what FedSubK is currently doing in
What?
the market.
Yeah, and great to be here, Ryan. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it having me on today. This is a lot of fun. I'm new to this, so forgive me. This podcasting stuff is a little outside of my norm. I'm used to meeting rooms with 300, 400 people. I'm okay with that. Podcast, I don't know why, gets me sometimes, but anyway. But yeah. As Ryan said, I've been in the federal space for quite a while. I started working as a federal employee back in 1987 as a military spouse. Actually, I was stationed overseas with my husband in Germany, and it was one of the only gigs in town. So I signed up for a civil service position and started out in HR actually, which was a lot of fun. I got to meet a lot of people, help military folks and their spouses and family members find government jobs overseas, which was a lot of fun.
Before I let you go, I have to ask questions. So which branch? Because I determine how long this podcast
Oh,
goes.
Army. But I'm married to a Marine now, so there you go.
No, I'm okay with all the service. I'm just joking. Where
I
in,
have a son-in-law in the Air Force. That counts too, right? So
now we can go a little bit extra.
yeah.
What duty station were you guys stationed at in Germany?
Oh, well, we were in Friedberg originally with 3rd Armored Division, that was a little north of Frankfurt, and then we moved down to Frankfurt. He was with an LRSD unit over outside of Frankfurt. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I spent some time in Stuttgart and K-Town. So
Know him well, yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, I just had to ask.
No, it's when you find somebody who's been there, you got to ask because it's a little family type of thing when you realize you've all been kind of at the same place, doing the kind of the same thing, right? So living
Like, so it's always been hard for military spouses, especially to find a career.
right.
It's only gotten better over time, at least in our experience, right? The 20 years that we were in the military. So I can only imagine how much of an uphill battle that was for you starting out.
Yeah, it was difficult, and it was easier overseas because you all knew each other, and there were everybody knew where the jobs were, right? But then coming back to the United States, it was difficult, and I worked a couple of years overseas, had one of my daughters in Frankfurt, and then tried to make the transition back to the United States, and I wrote a lot of letters actually back then. That this is pre-email days, right? So I wrote a lot of letters and was able to land a job at the Army Corps of Engineers in Chicago, which is where we were stationed. My husband was stationed in Joliet, so at the training area there. So yeah. So I worked in Chicago for a while and started as a secretary actually, and then moved into a procurement assistant position that was a promotion for me. And I had no idea what procurement was or what it meant or anything that I would be getting myself into. But it sounded interesting, and I thought, well, maybe this is a career path I can take and will get me a career as we move around, to different places. So that's kind of where I got my start was the procurement assistant, procurement tech role.
Absolutely. So what kind of drove you to want to stay in that space? Because I find it interesting, but I know that it's a lot of regulation, a lot of rules and things of that nature. Is that kind of like more of your personality driven, or was it something else that kept you within acquisitions?
Well, I think it was part of that. I really liked the HR piece, and I found that, it's regulatory heavy, policy heavy, and I seem to really excel at that. So I thought, okay, seems like a similar avenue, regulatory heavy, policy heavy. And I liked the learning aspect of it. There was training that came with it that was built into the career field for the military. So for in DoD at the time, there was a lot of training built in to be a acquisition professional. So, and this was about the time where the military members were not signing contracts anymore. They were starting to convert it to civilians, and they were giving civilians warrants and things like that to now sign contracts. So I came in around that time where that transition was happening. So it made it an even more enticing career field, looking at that and all the opportunity and the responsibility and I think the just the broad brush of everything you could get to do as an acquisition person, depending on what agency you were working with, I thought that was really appealing. And so I thought, well, if I can stick with this, if I can figure out performance and payment bonds, and I can figure out some of those things, maybe I can, work my way up the chain, which is what I actually ended up doing.
No,
So,
absolutely. And you really touch all of the career fields. So on our podcast, we mostly focus on tech and cyber, but everyone has to go through you, like for anything, whether it be construction to through
yeah.
modeling, through even contracts for food and services, just pretty much anything has to go
Yeah.
through that process. How was that transition from, you said you started in the late 80s until about, so I guess I should ask the question. So were you a contractor the entire time, or were you a GS, or
GS the whole
you were
time.
a GS? Got you. How was that? Because I know every time, like, at least on the military side, right? Every time you have a new administration or there's a
Yeah.
war or what have you, there's cycles, right? Things change and then things go back to the same, then things change
Hmm.
again, hopefully for the better. So how was that transition? Because I would think there would be no, I'm already forgetting things. Is it DAU? Is that where,
Yeah, DAU is very new. Yeah, you remembered it. You got it. I'm very impressed.
so I was a GPC card holder and a few other things, right?
There you go. Okay. I've touched that too. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Sure. No, it's been quite a change over the years. I mean, I've seen, even just the technology we used in the office, we didn't have the internet when I started. It was typewriters and, just word processor type things. And it's become now, I remember when we didn't have when we actually had to ask permission to use the internet because it cost money every time, that type of thing. So, I'm aging myself here, but I've seen quite a pendulum swing in terms of, all the different cycles that you go through. Like you said, with administrations, there's always a different cycle. When I was working in DoD, then you also had the cycle of your commanding officer moving in and out of the office as well. So that's a whole cycle. I'm sure you understand with your background. Yeah. Yeah, new boss every 3 years, right? At least. And so and then just, like you said, there was the Gulf War, there's been 9/11, there's been the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, under President Obama, and the COVID-19. So I've seen, four at least major cycles in terms of how procurement worked and some of the things that have come out of that. So it's also been very interesting to see a span of that amount of time. I didn't even realize it until you asked that question that I've seen all that. Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
amazing because yeah, just over the again like the military career, there is so much change. Like I forgot about the commander switch out every 2 to 3 years, so that's a
Mhm.
new management team, and they always have their own particulars how they want to do things,
Yeah, they do.
and on all levels, right? From your I guess I'm trying to think of the different echelons. So for me, it would be your squadron to your wing to your major command, and it's similar to Army, but
Right.
then you have on top of it congressmen and women, the president. Like there's a lot of different cycles, and like you said, depending on the climate of the world, like things change. I didn't even think about because I was in for the pandemic, but things shut down so much when I did start to acquire things, I was overseas. So then you have SOFA agreements, right? So that changes how you
Right.
procure equipment as well.
Plus, you have some higher levels overseas that you get to use too, which is kind of nice in the process when you're OCONUS. So that's I actually deployed to Afghanistan at one point in 2008 as a civilian with the Army. So and worked over there for a few months. So yeah, it's I've even been in a contingency environment, believe it or not.
Wow.
So
That's very impressive. So,
yeah.
uh, so you retire, right? So you're like, okay, I'm done. All I want to do as a GS or whatever the circumstances may be, right? It's just like, hey, I want to do something different. What brought you back? You were free.
Well, there was a little thing that always used to pester me when I was a contracting officer and became a chief of contracting later on and would meet a lot of small businesses that would come in and talk. They're looking for an entry point into the federal marketplace. And I always just felt that even though there were small business specialists and SBA and people like that, I always felt people didn't always hear the inside story of how government procurement worked. And it bothered me because I felt if they knew it, they could understand it better and maybe they could navigate an easier entry point or make better decisions about even if it's a market for them and not waste time. Maybe it's not a market for you and that's okay too. Or whether they want to be a prime contractor versus a subcontractor, they're both lucrative paths. So I just decided I had an idea that maybe there would be a niche out here in industry at some point after I retired that would allow me to share some of that. And over the years, I started teaching and doing some educating in government. And I learned that I enjoyed that, and I think I have a fairly good aptitude for it in terms of explaining things in a simpler scale. And so I thought maybe this is a business idea that I can go out and kind of set up a one-stop shop, and set up a website that can be like a one-stop resource and kind of pull all these different links from all these different government agencies into one place, organize them by a topic, maybe have some blogs, have some training, help people find training that's free, and just kind of you know give back. I feel like I got a lot from my service. Was lucky enough I worked long enough to retire. I retired because I finally hit minimum retirement age, so I thought I don't want to sit at home and paint furniture or anything like that. So I thought, well, let's give this a try and see what I can do with what I've learned and maybe share that with people and be a resource, be a small business advocate, lift up businesses that I think, deserve it and need to have an easier maybe entry point and just some basic knowledge about how it really works on the inside. What are contracting officers thinking? What are their pain points? What do they want to see? What do they not want to see? And just some of those decision processes that happen that is kind of done behind a curtain if you've never seen it before.
So I would say that what you're doing is very noble and definitely necessary. So when we do transition out of the military, there is a push to be an entrepreneur, right? They're like, oh, we have all these services, all these things ready for you. But there's a steep learning curve, is what I learned fairly quickly because you do have exposure, right? Like I was a GPC guy. I dealt with
Right.
a little bit of procurement and things of that nature, trying to find three sources or a sole source letter, things of that nature, right?
Hmm.
But that's very low level. When you come out and you start to work with contract or contractors, you find out very quickly that the marketplace is a different beast. Like, how do you sell
Yeah.
yourself? How do you find the services if you need the services? What services are available for your specific niche, right? So for
Right.
me, it would be service disabled, veteran-owned business or a veteran-owned business. But then there's also women veteran-owned businesses and things of that nature. Like there's several
Right.
different categories, and then each one gets their own benefits, so to speak. And I think it's amazing that all these resources are there. But like you said, finding all that information is not in one place. So I
Right.
have like 30 different tabs open. How do I do this? How do I do that? Where do I get
Yeah.
the training from?
Right.
There's not a lack of training. It's just a lack of, I would say, not really a filter, but like a anchor, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you told me to go to your site, I was like, okay, I'll click on it. And then I saw the roadmap, and I was like, this is what I needed
Yeah.
because I was about to do everything wrong.
Well, yeah, it's not. I mean, the thing is there's tons of information. There's tons of agencies that have, great products and great programs to help people, who are just coming in, like veterans coming into the workforce again, or small businesses who are pivoting from commercial space to federal sector. It's just finding it. And it's daunting because when people first start, it seems like this big mythical beast that you don't know how you're gonna, slay the dragon, type of thing. And it's where do you start? That's the other piece. It's like, where do I start? SBA has some really good starting resources, but that's again only one piece of the puzzle. There's okay, now that I know how to start a business, now that I know that I need to register in SAM.gov, what's the next step? How do I find an agency? How do people find me? How do I market to the government? And are there strategies that are easier versus more difficult? Prime versus sub, large contracts versus government purchase cards. So there's lots of different things and ways you can navigate it, but it is just a process, and it's just learning kind of the basic steps of that process. But yeah, it's daunting, and that's the other reason I think people just need help kind of figuring out some beginning points. Like you said, you went to the website, and I came up with those 8 points, and I thought, if you start here, you're not going to miss anything important in the beginning.
You know certain things, right? You're just like, okay, I know I need to, file my articles of organization. I know I need
Mhm.
to deconflict my name, things of that nature of my state, and
Right.
get my certificate. But then it's like, okay, what's next? So I was like, do I go with the VA, SAM.gov? Do I go to the SBA?
Right.
How do I become, certified with these different badges that, can ultimately help me to win, so to speak, and
Yeah.
find,
Get you set up for success.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's great to have someone, and being a small business, you can't necessarily, which I'm speaking as though I'm small. I'm not a small business yet. I'm trying to get the podcast and any publications put under the same banner as what I'm going for, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's daunting to figure those things out, and then on
It
top of it,
is.
what do I qualify, what I don't qualify for. So
Right.
you pointed me to your website, which is FedSubK. You gotta make sure I plug you, right?
Thank you.
So people know where to find you. It's almost as though I have someone on the payroll, because being a small business or trying to be a small business, you can't necessarily afford an acquisition specialist, right? So you have to be all those different roles as well. So where do I find the resources to then start this journey?
Yeah, and that's the other part of this is that I've worked with small business owners who would come into me in the federal government, and they'd say, "Well, I wear all the hats, right? So if you're wanting to ask about a proposal, call me. If you're not sure about where to do this, call me. If you have a problem about my SAM registration, call me." And I started realizing it's like, wow, they're doing everything. I have this huge appreciation for it. And that's the other part of FedSubK. The business I started is to kind of fill that acquisition role, like you said, because people don't have the time, don't have the money, and often it's a afterthought if something comes up in this area. It's something that you didn't know, but you need to fix fast. And so I like to be a plug and play person for people as well. If I have standing clients who that's what I do. If they get a letter from a contracting officer and they don't know what it means, they call me and say, "Hey, can you read this letter and tell me what this really means to me?" Or, I had some equipment stolen on a site and I don't know how to approach the contracting officer about that on this job. Can you help me? Or, hey, there's an RFI out here. Do you think we match up to it? And if we don't, tell me why. Just be upfront with me and pretend you're the contracting officer. So that's the type of stuff I do for people also on the side. So it's education is the part I love, but I also fill this gap for people too.
Because yeah, that is a big concern, is getting yourself in trouble, right? Not quite understanding the legalese when it comes to trying to be in this space, trying to provide service,
Yeah.
because you could not fulfill the request. So it's good to have someone like that to have your back. And lawyers are expensive, so
Yeah, they are. I'm cheaper than a lawyer.
they're very expensive. So no, so I think you found a brilliant niche, especially with your experience. So
Thanks.
I got to give credit where credit is due because like I would not have thought that that would have been a service that could be provided kind of a la carte, right? Like either I need you as a retainer, or I need you for specific services, or
Hmm.
in a consulting manner. So like you can fulfill all those roles. So like the wheels are turning. I don't have the acquisition knowledge, so
Yeah.
that you have to have that on top of it, right? Like having 35 years of experience on top of the
Yeah.
brilliant design of the company, that it clicks. So more power
Yeah.
to you.
Thank you.
Hopefully, I'll one day be big enough to require your services.
Yeah, you will be. I deal with a lot of new entrants, so that's the thing. It's like nobody should be afraid of coming to me because I deal with the newest of the newbies, right? Is my favorite person because it's again showing people, that it's not this daunting thing that they think it is, and it's just one step at a time, following one process at a time, and learning as you go, and that's what it's all about.
Got you. So I would like to kind of scale our questions, right? So people know I famously come into these things woefully underprepared because I like to have the conversation. But I can tell with just the amount of knowledge you have, I'm going to be able to ask you a question where I'm like, I know like, this is a question for a friend. It's really for me. And then here's the next step question, like what should I do once I get here? But then there's the advanced question, which I won't really know how to scale properly because I've never been there before, right?
Yeah,
So
no problem.
when it
We'll
comes to
figure it out.
small, medium, large, right? So the question for all of us novices. So I've filled out my articles of organization, right? I've decided what my company name will be, my vision, my mission statement, all that good stuff. And I want to start to advertise. Um, how do you go about that? Is there a certain way that you like? Do you register on SAM.gov and from there you can start to advertise your services, or is there some kind of step that I'm kind of currently missing?
Well, I think the first thing everybody needs to do is just find out if the federal marketplace is for you before you even register. So there's what I always say is like a market research piece. Like the government researches the market before it buys anything, you probably should research the federal market before you sell to it to see if they're actually buying what you're selling, who's buying it, and how much are they buying. And through that process, you can even learn more about your competitors. So it gives you an idea of who you'd be competing against. And then you can figure out, is this a target market for you that's worthwhile to before you go into all sorts of other, not that they're costly because SAM.gov is free and getting certifications through SBA is free, but they're time consuming. And if you want to play in the federal space, then at least knowing that what you're selling is something that the government buys, is important, and how often they buy it, where they buy it, who buys it, how much. Those are the questions you want to ask. So I always encourage people to do a little bit of market research first on that. And there's several tools out there, and I've got some guides on my website that walk through a few of those, and a couple of videos too. So yeah.
I'd crawl before you walk. So no, that's great to know. I once had a guest. It was Delisha Hodo. She said, "Take the stairs." Like everybody's trying to accelerate, right? Take the stairs. Like figure out what you
Yep.
want. So do your market research.
Yep.
So once you figure out that the widgets that you sell, right? I always use the widgets and airman snuffy, all
Yeah.
those military terms, right?
Yeah. I'm used to
So
that one too. So
so the government wants the type of widget that I'm making, right? So now I
yeah.
want to sell that widget uh, to the government. Is there a counselor, or is there a go-between, or do you just simply establish a space within the marketplace and then you basically set up shop and see if the government bites?
Yeah. So the first thing you have to do if you know you want to sell to the government is do that SAM.gov registration. That's number one, because if you're going to be a prime contractor, meaning you go directly to the government or they come directly to you, that's your number one. They're not going to sell to you any other way unless it's a micro purchase, which you're familiar with, with that they use with a credit card. Those would be under $10,000. Anything over $10,000, you're going to want to be in SAM.gov. So that's like number one. Number two, I would say, there's one place where the government looks for businesses. And if you're a small business, it's called SBA's Dynamic Small Business Search, DSBS. And it is automatically, a record is automatically created there for you if you register as a small business in SAM.gov. The problem is it's just a shell of a record, and you have to go out and fill it in, where you can fill in capabilities statement, a little bit more about what you do, those few things. And that's where you can kind of pump up what you do outside of a capabilities statement, which is another thing, another document you should write it as a one pager that explains who you are, what you do, and what makes you different from everybody else that does what you do. Give some differentiators. So I would say those are probably the three first things you can do. And the reason why I say DSBS is so important is because when the government is deciding and doing its market research about what it's going to buy, it has to check the market and see if small businesses are out there, how many can do it, and if they feel that they're qualified. And DSBS is the repository for small business records in terms of whoever's certified, whoever's registered in SAM, et cetera. And it is the number one place that contracting officers check first for small businesses. So it's really, really, really important that once you get that SAM.gov registration done, you go out to DSBS and fill in that record so that it speaks to the government, telling them all about you.
No, absolutely. So no, that's great knowledge to know. So is it kind of a set and forget it type situation where you set up all of your records and things of that nature and then you wait for someone to contact you? Or because there may be a lot of widget sellers in this marketplace that are selling similar widgets, do you have to market yourself in a particular way? How do you advertise outside of your record?
Yeah, so you definitely have to market. It's not a build it and they will come type of thing. So I always say start attending industry events that different agencies that are your target agencies are holding, small business events, things like that. And then I always recommend people get out on LinkedIn. I just think it's some free, easy advertising to build a business page on LinkedIn and a personal page out there and start talking about what you do. And just start connecting with people. Hit that connect button and say, hey, I'm following your content. I love it. I'm in the same space. Maybe we can chat. I would love to learn more about it, or I'm interested in seeing what else you have to say, and just start building a following. That's what I did 18 months ago. I retired from government. I hadn't been a business owner before, and that's all I've done is go out to LinkedIn and just start talking about what I do, what I know, and meeting people and connecting. And there's a lot of government people out there that are in LinkedIn, and you can start following and learning there. The other things you want to do is you want to look at SAM.gov has contract opportunities section. So you can set a search out there that will send you opportunities that match with your industry so that you can review them and see what's open.
That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's other commercial tools that will do that too, but they're at a cost. Most of them are at a cost. But SAM.gov is free.
Right. No, absolutely. So that's once you scale, right? Once you're actually bringing in some kind of revenue, then you
Yeah.
pay for tools and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So no, that's amazing. Okay. So the larger question. So
Mhm.
you have your niche, your niche, however you want to say it. You're making the widgets. You've made some really good connections through networking, attending events, and things of that nature. Are there any special provisions that you should also be checking out when it comes to being a woman in the space or a veteran? Because I've seen certain things that are called set aside, right?
Yep.
Have no clue what that means aside from just the words.
So there's all sorts of what they call federal contracting assistance programs that SBA runs. There's for minority owned businesses, there's women owned businesses, there's veteran and service disabled veteran owned businesses, and then there's businesses that are located in a historically underutilized business district or zone, hub zone business. And you can check out what all those mean on SBA. You just Google federal certifications SBA and it will pop up. But what that does is if you apply for those and you receive one of those certifications, I'm an SBA certified woman-owned small business. I applied for one of those. If you make under a certain amount a year in terms of total gross receipts, total income from your business, within a certain NAICS code, North American Industry Classification Code, which you'll select when you register. It basically is a 6-digit code that just explains what your industry is and what you do in it. And the SBA has a size standard that they apply to that code. And if you fall under that dollar value or number of employees, then you're considered small. And then you can apply for one of these certifications if you meet one of those other criteria. For the federal assistance programs. If you get that certification, then that makes you eligible for what's called set asides, where the government says, okay, we have a project and we've gone out to that DSBS I mentioned, and we can see that there are plenty of small businesses that can do this work. So, what we're going to do is instead of putting this out on the open market for everybody to bid on it, everybody to propose on it, we're going to set it aside for just this subset of businesses, woman owned business, service disabled, veteran owned business, whatever. And only they can compete on it. Only those that are certified can compete on it. So it gives you a smaller competition pool, which gives you a greater chance of winning. So that's some of the benefits of having that certification.
That's awesome. Like you said, still competition, but you're not competing against a big name like a Jacobs or something like that.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it takes those big players out of the game and it gives this pool of dollars to these businesses. And the government has a requirement, a mandate to contract with businesses in each of those categories up to a certain percentage every year. So, for example, service disabled veteran-owned small businesses, 5% of all the government's prime contracts are supposed to go to service disabled veteran-owned small businesses through these set-asides. Same with woman-owned. Same with 8A, which is a subcomponent of the minority uh, small disadvantaged business group. So there's all that gives you a leg up. It also sometimes when the government has large contracts, it will break it into competition pools where the larges only compete against each other and these small businesses compete against each other in these separate pools. So it's a way to get a piece of the pie, and it gives you that without having to compete, like you said, against the Jacobs and the Raytheons and the SAICs and everybody in the world. Yeah. No offense to any of them, but they are big.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't want to just call out Jacobs. This just popped in my head first. I used to work in
Yeah.
here in Tampa. I worked in the Jacobs.
Right. Yeah. They should be flattered by the name recognition.
But no, all awesome information because we only get a small taste of it when we're still in the military. And then when you come out and you start to work for contractors or contract
Right.
companies, you get a little bit more of the inside baseball, but it still seems kind of, daunting because those companies usually have a C-suite and they all have specializations. They all kind of know what they're doing when it comes to competing for these contracts. So just you being out there by yourself, naked and afraid, so to speak, it's kind of like, what do I do next? Because
Right.
I am wearing all those hats, but I only have my specific skill set, not all of these 10 different jobs.
Well, and you only have so much time, right? In the day, there's only so much if you're trying to keep your business going and trying to find business and trying to learn all at the same time. I mean, it's a lot of hours in a day. That's why small business owners are, tired people.
Absolutely. Uh, so let's switch the focus, right? So you being a small business owner yourself now and dealing with helping out other small businesses and things of that nature, you have a ton of resources on your website. So let's talk about the website and kind of some of the features because I've only scratched the surface, right? Like I'm looking at the roadmap and it's going step by step through things I need to do to establish myself as a small business, regardless of what kind of you know business I want to be.
Right, right. Well, I think the first page everybody should start at is, well, I have a resource library, first of all, and I think that's where everybody should start. And a couple of the pages under there that I think are really good is the Begin Your Journey Here page, which is where you were talking about. It's kind of the roadmap, gives you like 8 steps. And eight may sound like a lot, but it's really important to kind of step through them and not miss them because I think the businesses that take their time and get through them sustain better in the marketplace. They're not playing catch up all the time on stuff. So if you walk through each of those steps, I've given a list of assessment questions that I think you should ask yourself or your business, and then a list of actionable items that you can either find the information on a linked website, I've written an article for it, or I have a guide or a template, or I even refer you to other people in the space that I just think do it better than me. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So, and I don't have any problem sharing that information with anybody freely either. I think that's, we're all in this to try and help everybody. So let's just share. And so I have those 8 steps. I think that's the first place to do is kind of walk through those before you freak out and say, oh, there's an opportunity and I need to bid on it today. I mean, you really, kind of learn that this is the patience and persistence thing in federal contracting is really important. And so slow and steady wins the race, the turtle thing, the tortoise and the hare. And so that I think is important. That page is really a good starting point for everybody. I always direct people there if they haven't seen it. And then the quick links page on the resource library has all sorts of topics broken out by category and links to the government sites where you can find information. So, for example, there's a free support category where you can find free support to help you as a business owner entering the federal space. If you don't know what SAM.gov is and don't know how to register, there are people there who are paid to help do this through government grants and things like that. There's information on how to find pricing on GSA schedules. For veterans, Boots to Business, and some of those other programs that are out there to help vets transition. All sorts of things like that. How to find contract opportunities, how to find subcontract opportunities. If you don't want to be a prime, but you'd rather subcontract, there's links to that too. So it's tons of links out there. I would say over 100. Easy, but I've grouped them into categories so they're easy to find. And then 2 other areas I think are really important is I have a small business events calendar page, and what I do is I go through the SBA calendar and all the major activities calendars, and I pull out small business events that I think are worth your time as a business owner to attend.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and they're free. Most of them are free unless I indicate otherwise. But yeah, and I put the dates, I put links to the registration, I put the times so you can see what fits your calendar, and I do it for the current month and the coming month, so that you can plan your schedule ahead. So if you see something, and a lot of those classes will recycle every quarter or so you're not going to miss anything if you miss the one typically. I also try to put a link of major conferences coming up so you can plan if you want to try and attend and meet people and network that way in person. And then I just have the agency small business calendars there. So if you really want to target an agency, you can find their calendar and see what's going on with that agency. And then the last thing is I have a newsletter and a blog where I do 2 articles a month on just contracting basics. And then I also run down all the regulatory changes that impact small businesses and contracting in federal government that are upcoming and also that have just recently occurred. So people can stay on top of that too.
Right. And I think that's also daunting, is because you're just like, if something changes, how do I find it? How do I figure it out?
Yeah. Well, I track it for you, so you don't have to worry about it.
So is there a registration process? How are people updated? So as your content changes or it's updated.
Yeah, if you go out to the website, you can sign up for the newsletter. I send it out on the first weekend of every month. And then I have been starting to do monthly webinars, one a month. So I make a notification of that and I give you a heads up of what the date and the time is in the newsletter. And I always put at least 2 weeks between the beginning of the month and when I do the webinars so that you've got time to plan if you want to attend. I record it. It's also on a YouTube channel that I have, and as well as the website. There's a link on the website as well. So all that is there. And then if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, on my personal account, Shauna-Weatherly, it's I put everything out there too. So if you follow me, you won't miss it. I post probably once a day minimum on LinkedIn because there's so much going on, but you'll find it. And if you can't find it there, you can always just direct message me and I'll let you know. No.
No, amazing. So, and I highly recommend if a person is not following you on LinkedIn, they definitely should follow you on LinkedIn, just for the updates, right? Because you do provide a lot of content. But again, it's the networking piece of it. Like you said, LinkedIn is an amazing tool to network, especially within the federal space. So for any of those veterans, minorities, or women, or any category of person who's thinking about starting to go into business or starting their own business, they should definitely be following you. And because you have a ton of resources, again, that are out there, but there's just so much space.
There is. Yeah, and it can get confusing even just following me on LinkedIn. So, but I always tell people just go back to the basics and walk through those 8 steps. You get through those, then you can start thinking about, okay, should I bid on a project or not? And then I have a support network page also on the website. So when you get to that point, I don't do bid and proposal work. I don't want to be on the hamster wheel anymore of doing that stuff. But there are plenty of people who do. And so I have a bunch of people out there who provide support that I recommend, that I trust, that I've met over the last year and a half who are really good at it. And again, I can't be everything because I'm a small business owner too, right? So yeah, I refer people out all the time, and I trust the people that I'm referring people to, and I think they're all, many of them have been in this business in the government contracting space in industry for over 20 years, and I would trust them. So
So yeah, so you're given a lot of the keys to the kingdom, right? There's a lot of free resources. Like your page again brings it all together, especially with the roadmap and those 8 steps. And then you have the blogs, the articles, the videos. Like there's a ton of content, especially for someone who is just now getting into the space, all the way to someone who is more advanced, right? In the
right.
next 3 to 5 years, if my empire takes off, there will still be gathering information from you.
Yeah, yeah, and then there's support services when you really get into that space. I write subcontracts for small businesses so that when they're working with their own suppliers later down the road, I can help them figure out how to do that, how to be compliant when they win their first government contract. What are the compliance pieces they need to think about? And even for large businesses that are looking for subcontractors, I can help them too. So I work. The name is Federal Subcontract Solutions. That's where FedSubK came from, and so I kind of focus in that subcontracting space for services I provide, but I do a lot of ad hoc support too. So yeah, there's a lot there. You can get lost on that page for a while. You can go down the rabbit hole there for sure.
I think I'm on step three. So I'm taking, I'm taking my time because I really want,
Not a bad thing.
yeah, I want to get it right, right out of the gate, right? I don't want to make any
Yeah.
mistakes
Yeah,
because
it saves.
reputation is very important, especially within this sphere. You think that there's a lot of contractors and contract companies, which there are, that's a fair amount, but it's a small community, so you don't want to, uh, make mistakes where you could have basically figured it out before you started, right? Like you said, take
Yeah.
your time. The slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, and I think it's important, especially for small businesses right now, because the number of small businesses in federal marketplace has dropped dramatically in the last 8 years. And it's because people become disenchanted because of the process, and I think some people come into it without, having their eyes wide open about what it really takes, or the patience, or having the ability to be patient. Sometimes you just got to make money and keep moving. I get that. But that means that the space isn't really for you yet. And so that's where I just think people, I think that's one of the reasons the businesses have fallen off. There's a big push in government to bring small businesses back into the, marketplace, because the government realizes, up to 25% of what it contracts out, it needs to go to small business, and that's just the prime contracts. There's also subcontracts that have to meet a certain percentage that those large businesses we talked about have to meet. So, but small businesses are the backbone of our economy. They're the backbone of federal work, and we really need to get businesses back in. So there's a huge push in the federal market to bring small businesses back to the federal marketplace.
Absolutely. So if you're listening to this and you're kind of on the fence, just, again, start baby steps, but think about those things that you've been trained on, that you've been doing for years, or that you were taught, whether it be from the academic side of the house, or if you were somewhere involved in the Department of Defense or federal space.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need you. So we need people in this space. And it's not bad once you start to understand it. So I'm still far from understanding. The more I dig into the resources that you provide, the more I start to get clarification. I'm like, oh, okay, this is similar to something I've done in the past, or it just makes sense that it would
Yeah.
function this way. And it's just being mindful of that federal government does things a little bit differently, but for specific reasons. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's to keep the playing field level as much as possible so everybody gets a chance at at a piece of the pie, right? That's the primary goal of the federal procurement system, is to just keep it equitable as much as possible.
Absolutely. So I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of uh, veer off this path, right? Like there's a ton of resources. We want everybody to go to your website. We will definitely make sure we have all of the links. And then if you have any specific videos or anything that you would like me uh, to either share, put in the newsletter or what have you, because I'll pitch my newsletter at the end. But I definitely want to share these resources because I don't want to be on a journey alone, right? I want if
Yeah,
someone else is out there with it's just now starting out or thinking about it, like it's good to have peer groups, mentor sessions, things of that nature, and just to talk it out. Like, hey, I experienced this, or I'm looking at that, or we're doing something similar. Have you seen this? I think that
right.
stuff is great. So I would definitely like people to talk about this in the comments, especially if they're on this journey. And then they can also ping you because, again, you're a wealth of knowledge within this field. But what do you do outside of the acquisition and running your own small business? Because I talked to a lot of people. I've been blessed this year. I believe you're either number 19 or number 20 of people to be on Ask a CISSP this year, which is
That's
2.5
amazing.
times more than last year, right?
Yeah.
To share this wealth of knowledge, to share these resources, to show people they're not in it by themselves. But I have to show the other side of you. Like you don't just work all day. Maybe 20 out of the
No.
24 hours of the day.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
When you do have time to unwind or space to find time for yourself, what do you do with that time?
What do I do? Wow. A lot of the times I'm traveling with my husband. We love to travel. We're avid travelers. So, uh, we're always seems like we're planning the next trip. And now that I'm retired, it's even more fun because I can be gone longer, and I can work from wherever I'm at. So that's kind of nice. This last year, it's been all about becoming a new grandmother. So,
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
thanks, thanks. So we've had a lot of family trips to see the baby and back, but a lot of the times I read. I love art. I do calligraphy, which takes some patience and time, and it usually relaxes me quite a bit because you have to be relaxed to do it. So you have to start out, and it gets a little tough, but you get going and you get some music playing in the background, and you can do some nice things. And so I practice that to kind of relax.
No, absolutely. So I would ask two follow-up questions then. When it comes to traveling, are you traveling in the States or overseas?
Both, actually. So, yeah, let's see. Our last big trip was we went to Italy for 3 weeks in March and April. So,
Oh, so I do remember that. So 3 weeks.
yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, yeah, that was my retirement gift to myself about a year and a half late. So, yeah.
No, that's amazing. Hopefully you got some really good food. I was stationed in Sicily
Oh,
for a time because I was technically deployed. I couldn't go to Italy, right? So it's right there. But
right
amazing
there.
food, amazing culture and people, like I said,
Yes.
crazy sights. So I can only imagine 3 weeks
Oh, yeah,
where you're
it
not,
was a
working because I had to work and then find time to travel. So that must be amazing.
Oh, it was amazing, and we've been before and hit a lot of the tourist places in a shorter period of time, but this time we did back roads, drove, stayed in little Airbnbs, met a lot of people that were just wonderful. Asked them what they would do if they had a day free, and they pointed out all sorts of little things we never would have seen on a tourist map or anything. So it was really a gift. It was great, and yes, lots of great food and wine.
And everyone is so thin. So I was like, is it possible? Like because they walk everywhere, they don't buy in bulk like we do. Like the
Nope.
refrigerators are tiny, so they're constantly, like they're buying their dinner for the day and things of that nature.
Not processed food, no. And you will walk more in Italy. You will lose weight on a vacation in Italy. I just promise you that. Doesn't matter how much you eat, you will lose weight because you walk so much. So,
But no, it was what the
yeah.
parts that I saw of Sicily were amazing. So I can only imagine. One day I'm gonna go back. I'll probably
Yeah.
try out Sicily. Or I'm sorry, try out Italy. I drank a lot of wine.
I love it. Yeah, it's great. But we've gone quite a few places in Europe. We've done some in the Caribbean. I would like to. We went to Australia a year ago. My husband has a family member that lives in Australia, so we were able to stay with them for a month in Australia, which was amazing. So, It's a horrible flight, but it's a great time when you get there.
So then my second follow-up question, because you said that you do calligraphy and you listen to music. So what genre? Like what are you listening to in your
I like it. I like it all. I like it all. Yeah, it just depends on what's going on, but I'm kind of a Post Malone fan right now. So yeah, yeah, that's kind of my jam right now.
All right. I was thinking because when I think calligraphy, I think like jazz or something to that effect. Like Andre 3000 has a jazz album, so it
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I've got to check that out. That's insane.
plays the flute. Like there's no lyrics, he's not rapping, he's playing the flute.
I played the flute in high school. I'm gonna have to check it out now.
You might enjoy it. It's definitely acquired taste. But I
Yeah,
liked it. I call it spa music. Like if you want to
there you
just
go.
sit out and relax, then his album's pretty good.
Yeah, I like guitar music too, guitar and piano sometimes too for that. But yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out.
No, absolutely. But this was a great time. I definitely want to have you back on, not only for my own selfish reasons, because it's kind of like I'm getting some free consulting, but
I'll give you free consulting anyway, Ryan.
no, just it's good to have people on who give you different insights, right? Because it's not cybersecurity, it's not IT, but if I want to be a small business within that field, I have to talk to somebody in acquisitions, especially someone who's as knowledgeable as you are. So it's good to have that uh, different slice of life, so to speak, a different aperture
Yeah,
or lens to look at. Like, okay, if I want to be successful in this field, it's not all about me just being really good at cyber or IT. I also have to pick up other skills.
yeah,
Especially if I'm in the federal space, I have to understand how the acquisition process works. Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, because performance is only one half of it when it comes to federal acquisition, right? The other half is staying compliant with the federal rules and doing the reporting you have to do and keeping your contract up to date, depending on what your contract is. So that performance is just as important as the performance you give the customer in terms of what you're trying to sell. So I always try to tell people that it's and that's what makes it a little daunting. But that's okay too because you can learn a lot about it and you can choose what role you want to have. Do you want to subcontract, prime contract, maybe do these micro purchases that are smaller and a more bite-sized piece of work? There's lucrative paths in all of it and successful paths in all of it.
no, absolutely. So thank you very much for your time. I think if nothing else, we pretty much touched on definitely the taking your time, right? Like go to the site. So go to the FedSubK. That is not veiled marketing. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm actually going through this process. So go to the website.
I've been through it myself, so I know too. I've done the registrations, I've done the certification, I've done it too. Yeah, I've lived it.
Start your journey. Start going down the roadmap, and then just take your time getting there and figuring out how it all works. And then again, you have a ton of resources. I really enjoy the website. You have the articles, the blog, the videos.
Thank you.
Like you're doing a lot of great multimedia stuff, newsletter. So I'm using some of that as examples for how to better generate my content and then make it palatable to people in my space. So definitely check out the website. Go to FedSubK. Definitely follow Shauna Weatherly on LinkedIn. Send her a message if you want to connect to things of that nature. And then just start to build your network. Again, like LinkedIn is a great tool, especially when you're starting out. And then I did not know that you had the calendar for events. So to meet people virtually and in person can do nothing harmful to building your network, right? Like
Right.
shaking hands, meeting people. It keeps your face and your name in their mind for when it's time to make those purchases and things of that nature. So networking goes a long way.
Yes.
So definitely take advantage of all the resources that Shauna's providing, and yeah, start your business.
Yeah, go for it.
But thank you again for your time. I think this was an amazing episode, so I cannot wait to post it and get people's opinions, and hopefully start to build a network of people who are also in this competitive space, right? Because like you said, it's not all about the competition. It really is about helping each other out, and the government needs us. So there's plenty of space within the federal space, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, hit up all the websites that go by our names, either the other side of the firewall, the other side of the FW, or Ask CISSP. If you like this content, We Monday and Tuesday are topics, Wednesday discussion, Thursdays just like this, Ask CISSP or throwback to another one that I recorded earlier in the year or last year. And then Fridays, everything else. So we talk about movies, books, games, all that good stuff. So we try to keep it light on Fridays because we do things outside of just work, right? So we like to share that with the audience as well. And then where can they find you, Shauna?
Oh, well, they can find me on FedSubK.com, and you can always email me at shauna.weatherly@fedsubk.com.
There it is. Stay safe, stay secure.